I'm always curious with anytime anyone covers a song, much less an entire album, is is there anything that you realize or now appreciate about this music now that you've had to learn to play it and translate it into your own voice that maybe you didn't realize when you were just a passive listener?
Absolutely, yeah. It's kind of it's a bit tricky to quantify because this album has always been one that's been really fun to listen to, obviously, but like it's a journey in itself. And as a musician, kind of listening to that, it was only really in recent years when I think I started listening to it with a view to how would we do this? You know, how on earth would somebody how if we were going to do this, how the heck would we do it?
Yeah.
And let and let alone when we actually got into the studio to start doing it and listening to it, you know, listening to the originals enough. You know, we had an incredible band, um, and our friends in Taurus Rising out in California. So they've
Mhm.
got Pearl Charles and Michael Rolt, who are both incredible artists in their own right. They have a great studio um, out in the desert near Joshua Tree where we recorded it,
Mhm.
and they know a bunch of really cool guys who like are just, you know, they said, you know, we had got into a conversation about it, and they were like, well, we know some people that could pull that off, like
Mm.
if you know felt like giving it a go.
Yeah.
And so yeah, when we got into it, I guess like hearing it, listening to the originals again, and then like playing it through, trying to get the essence of it with the band, there was yeah, we saw it from a completely different side with a newfound admiration for the original record, for sure, but kind of finding our way with it like a bit of an apparatus to kind of climb
Mhm.
on without wanting to deviate too much from what was an incredible original record.
Yeah. But was there anything where it's like, "Oh, I never really noticed that they did this with this particular song or this particular arrangement, and now that I'm
Oh
trying to
yeah,
work it up on my own, it's,
yeah.
I'm really noticing."
Oh yeah. There's heaps of them. Like especially with like, I couldn't help but notice your hands doing that. Like particularly guitar parts. You know, there were particularly with guitar parts. You know, digging into that stuff and then finding out. You know how many guitars are playing there. What's the tuning of that one? You know,
Yeah.
you know, and just hearing how it all works. And we had so Michael himself plays guitar on this track. Also, our friend Steve Milburn plays guitar on this track, and they've played together quite a lot before. I wouldn't say loads, but like yeah, quite a bit. They've jammed out a lot before, and getting together probably less often because you know he lives in the UK and he lives in California. When they
Yeah.
do get together and jam out, it's really great, and they sort of put together these kind of these moments between them, um, where we could play off those like those different kind of voices that the guitars and stuff are playing, and that's just the
Mhm.
guitars. You know, yeah, there were so many levels on which you start to find these particulars, um, and it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. Loved the studio time.
Mhm.
Um,
One thing that stood out, just speaking of the guitars, is the sound of the guitars on all of these tracks. They have that very kind of old school, uh, uh, you know, sound like, that Steven Stills had when he was emerging from Buffalo Springfield. And I'm curious, did you guys specifically like was that the credit of the guitar? Like you guys found guitars that had that sound, or was that the result of the board and whoever was engineering saying, all right, we can adjust this and it'll give it that Canyon vibe?
I would say it's a little bit of both there, Chris.
Okay.
Michael's an excellent producer and engineer, and he's a great guitar player, and he's really into his guitars and he loves them, and he's got loads of great like gear, like especially like original like analog gear. So he loves getting things like right and like got some cool stuff. And he but he's great. He's a great engineer as well. But there with this. I'm sorry, I've lost my plot a minute.
How you achieved what sounded like this old school guitar sounds,
Oh yeah, that was it. So there was a little bit of both. So we had some good original gear. We had some great engineering. Steve also managed to pick up, because we were just talking about the guitars in general, and he picked up. I think it was like maybe it was like a D28 or something that that Steven Stills was playing on the record, and he managed to find one just in time for the record. To so some of those acoustic parts, like the famous acoustic parts that were played on that Gibson, he was playing on like the same guitar now. So some things we were kind of like pretty particular about. There's a very particular sound on some guitars and some effects, and we didn't want to steep it too much in that old soundy thing, but we also wanted it to sound like, it was from a time, like a bit of a nod.
Yeah, it's like I'm not sure if it would have had the same effect had it had a very modern, kind of say Fender effects pedal kind of thing going on. It just it still had that grittiness. But in terms of putting your own spin on things, I was reading, there was one interview where you said sometimes it's interesting if you veer away from the obvious choice of who should sing which section. And I thought that was interesting with this album, because there are some songs where particularly like Almost Cut My Hair, where it's like, oh, okay, they went in a different direction on this, but you didn't do it for each song, like, especially like 4 and 20, where you take the lead, and it's because you have more of that Stephen Stills kind of voice. What determined whether you went in a different direction vocally or not?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think it was kind of song specific a lot of the time. Obviously, like there's two women and myself, and we're all singers. So depending on the vibe of it, I mean, sometimes there are songs where it feels like you can almost do a bit of a relay, and you can like pass the story on through like different voices.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's very much, you listen to a song and you go like, this one's got like the vibe of you right now, or like this would sound really good on your voice, or maybe if you sung this one it would give it a totally different connotation, and that'd be cool. But also, like, I think, well, particularly with 4 and 20, that was like I think that was so Robin, who came up to us with this idea from our publishers years ago, when the band first got together, and suggested that, it was early days, and I think he first planted the seeds, Robin Miller, in our head of he said, "Oh, I'd love to one day hear what it would sound like to Deja Vu when your guys is to hear you guys do the whole of Deja Vu," and we sort of planted that seed for us. But one thing that he said when we came to putting the record together was like, I think it'd be really cool if 4 and 20 was just still you just doing the guitar, kind of like Stephen Stills did. That would be quite a cool thing to do. So we were prepared for that, and so I was like, right, I'll figure out how to play and sing it, for example. So that's kind of like how that one came about. But then when we came to record it, we had the band there, and we were like, does it have to be just like just me and the guitar?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that a bit too much? Like, so we just tried something out, and the band were just like went with it, and that we ended up going like, that sounds way better. Sounds way
Yeah.
better. And then you know, especially later on when it came to putting on like extra layers of vocals, we'd find little spaces for ourselves here and there, and if it called for it, but if it didn't, then we sort of stuck to what they had mapped out for us a little bit.
Right, right. But like as you guys have talked about in other interviews, having one of the ladies sing "Almost Cut My Hair" changes it in many ways. I don't know. It doesn't change the song necessarily, but I don't know. It gives it a different power. It gives it a different resonance, especially in today's times. And
Yeah,
so, I thought that was one of the really interesting things that you guys did was, and we're not just going to rubber stamp, okay, recreate it. We're going to, reinterpret it in a way.
yeah, that was a really cool moment. Was when we started hearing it that go in that direction.
Hmm.
And the moment, you know, it went from like, why don't we try this for a second, to hearing this song from a completely different perspective. Um, that was really cool, and suddenly we realized how hard hitting it could be,
Hmm.
especially now, as you said.
Yeah.
Um, that yeah, I guess that was one song where it just really felt like it could do with something different.
Yeah, and it's great because it doesn't take anything away from the original, but
Mm.
it's you get to see this song from a whole different light,
Yeah,
which I think is the advantage of this whole album. It's not a remake. It's not it is appreciating what came before, and but still being yourself. And I'm wondering what's the key to walking that line because it seems a very you're on the kind of the knife's edge there. Like, well, we don't want to do, too much of an imitation of what came before, but we also don't want to go too far afield where it's unrecognizable.
yeah. It's a tough one, and I think you just kind of have to feel it out. And like, who knows? Like, maybe for some people it is too much one side or another, but you just kind of have to. You just kind of have to ride it at that moment, at that time. You know, when the choices are there in front of you, you got to kind of go, well, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
that's kind of it. Like, you just have to kind of, yeah, go with it, go with
Hmm.
it as much as you can, and like
Like,
do what you think
you know,
is best.
right. And so, like, I was listening to your version of Our House, which compared to the original, it's like it's almost a little ethereal in the ways that you guys do it. And there's almost more of a touch of melancholy that kind of seeps in there. And it made me
Yeah.
wonder when you guys did these, did you guys discuss how you interpreted these songs personally or what you thought the meaning was behind each one?
Well, yeah, sometimes, you know, sometimes, you know, there were some, there obviously are a lot of stories as well about how the songs are written that, you know, are really interesting. Um, and, you know, we were talking a little bit about that, and, we connect, you know, when you're singing things through, and we didn't want to get the words wrong as well. So obviously, like, we had to like make sure that we double checked everything that we thought we knew was the words. um, and in doing that, I guess it made us have a sort of a different appreciation, and like
Mm,
be able to reflect on actually what these songs are really about, or what they mean, at least what they mean to us now.
yeah,
Um, when we came to singing them, because just through singing them, you know, you have to connect with your own your emotional meaning, what it is you're singing.
yeah.
um and I think, yeah, I think it kind of unlocked a bit of that. Certainly some songs like Our House is a good one, and Teach Your Children, you
Hmm.
know, we're all bloody reflective and thinking about our immortality and, you know, all of that stuff, which is important. But yeah, I think it just, it's caused us to look at them in a slightly different way.
Yeah. And in working out all of that, I thought it was cool. I saw you guys posted a reel not too long ago where you were listening to, you had gotten a first pressing of the album and you were listening to Our House, and you were you talked about working out the harmonies when you were in Chess's kitchen, and I think it's Tara said, quote, something along the lines of, we often do our best work while doing things like cooking and drinking. um, and I get the whole, you know, okay, if you loosen up, you know, it allows you to be a little bit more creatively free. And I love the ideas of you guys working out the harmonies and everything while you're just preparing a meal or having a drink. Then the question is, okay, how do you take advantage of that in the studio or in a live setting? How do you recreate that same vibe?
That's something that we always try and strive towards. I guess the first time we ever realized that we were recording our second record in Woodstock, upstate New York. Long story short, we had the opportunity to play through the songs that we were going to record the following day in this great, crazy old music room in this house we were staying in. And it gave us an opportunity to kind of think through what we thought we were doing a bit more. And then we made that more of a thing that we would do, you know, was to, you know, make sure we were. So, but in this circumstance, you know, we had about 10 days. We had best part of a week with the band, and then we slung all the vocals on in about 3 or 4 days. But some of that stuff we had just, you know, we would be just living while stuff was going on. And we'd have the time as well, luckily, to be able to kind of relax a bit. So ever since that time, I think we found that when we go through it, we make sure we know what we're doing and we mark it. But it's often when you've started to let it bed in, and you can do it when you're doing something else, like making the tea or cooking, or somebody's making a drink or something. When it gets to that point, you start to notice how it can ebb and flow a little bit more, and where the pushes and the pulls can naturally come. And especially with harmonizing, you really want to find, it's really nice when you can let all the voices find their way with it.
Yeah. I mean, and that also brings up another thing that I was curious about, you know, again, as you steeped yourself in this album, in this music, has that, I mean, I know it's only just coming out in a little bit, but has that experience in any way influenced how you write, how you think of guitar solos, how you think of harmonies?
Yeah, totally. It's really nice. It's really good to be able to bed into some of that stuff, and to, especially now, because I think there is like a bit of a tendency to, like, I'm a sucker for a guitar solo. I'm a sucker for an instrumental. You know, I think if it's appropriate, you know, let things have space. It's really nice to have a bit of space sometimes. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young were like really good at, you know, as artists, but like a lot of their contemporaries were as well. And like that particular artist in that time, there was people weren't afraid of space. They gave everything space, and you know, where there were moments for solos or like instrumental parts, they earned their place to be there, you know, and it drew you in. And like with the sort of, it feels a little bit, and I don't want to sound like too much like I've got my pipe and slippers here, but it feels like a lot of time nowadays that can get rushed, whether it's because of it, like attention spans or demand or whatever. Like, I feel like there's less, people are less patient with the space for that stuff, and it's really nice to kind of, like you say, steep yourself in it and go, oh, why not? Like, are we doing this for, who are we doing this for? People that want to hear this, you know, hopefully,
Right.
and enjoy it.
Yeah, like the title track Deja Vu, where it starts off with that complicated instrumental part, and then there's kind of a break, and it's almost like you think, oh, that was just a little instrumental, and it's like this pause before it kicks into the full song. You're right, you don't hear that kind of stuff, certainly with the stuff that charts nowadays. It's like, no one would dare take that pause, like for fear that people would mentally tune away at that point in time.
Absolutely. Nobody would be leaving that on now. They'd just be kicking that track in straight from that pickup, you know.
Yeah.
If that. But yeah, it's cool. It's nice to be able to actually dig into it, and I think it definitely has shaped. I mean, yeah, we've had some pretty cool experiences that have definitely shaped the way that we approach writing and recording, for sure.
But you think this will also influence how you work going forward? Like, oh, I kind of learned some different things just delving into this music, that I might approach harmonies different. I might approach writing a verse differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, you start to hear, I think when we've been covering like certain vocal lines, for example, on this record, there'll be, for like one song, somebody will be going like, you're doing Neil Young on this one, which means you've got to be David Crosby there.
Yeah.
It's like, who's gonna fill whose shoes for this song, and then like, are we gonna stage those parts? And then like there'll be bits where we'd make up our own parts as well a bit, you know.
Yeah.
And when you get really used to singing in someone's lane, I think you can start to hear where they would go a little bit as well, which is quite fun then, because you can start to imagine little harmonies or things that they might do, even if they didn't do it. And yeah, it's quite a fun thing to employ when you're writing or putting together harmonies, to go, you know, oh, where's the space? Like, you're forever constantly with singing, especially with us three. Where's the gap? You know, where's the gap? Like, who's singing what? Where do I sing? Where's the gap? You know, and when you start to think, where's the gap? Where would they put it? You get some really funky places. So it's it's going to be quite fun, like writing more with that in mind.
Okay. Yeah, and sticking also with Deja Vu, were you the person that played the primary guitar on that one?
No, that would have been Steve. That would have been Steve Milbourne on that one, I think, or Michael
Okay.
Roll. But they both play guitar on that. I think the only one I think I am playing guitar on is on 4 and 20.
Oh, okay.
I think so. I've got a chance to just sing.
And then, but what about when you guys do it live?
When we do it live, we've got a few like a more kind of acoustic arrangements of some of the songs, for sure. But yeah, some of them, when we do it over in America, we've got a great band. So we'll be doing, we've got a couple of guitarists and the bass and the keys and the drums and everything, and we'll do our bit.
Yeah, because yeah, that song in particular, it's a tough guitar part to play and to do it well and to pull it off, and so I'm always impressed when someone can make it sound effortless.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, like I said, these guys, they're not mucking around.
The other thing that I love about this project is a new project similar to it is for instance, because of this, I developed a whole new appreciation for the song "Helpless."
Oh yeah.
I grew up hearing it over and over again, obviously, but hearing a lady sing it and in a softer tone, you focus a little bit more on the verse lyrics than I think, at least I did, with Neil Young singing lead, where it was just, he put a harshness to it, an abrasiveness to it that had and so I think that's one of the cool aspects of albums like these. It's like, oh wow, I'm learning to appreciate this song in a whole different way.
Yeah,
And
cool.
yeah, and I mean, was that part of the goal of this album?
Well, I don't know if I'd say it was a goal. I wouldn't say it was necessarily a goal. I think we were just wanting to do it, but when you come to, I guess, figuring it out how to make it work best. Yeah, I mean, it's one of them things about covering anything, isn't it? Why do people cover anything? And I remember I used to be like, I used to get really annoyed sometimes when I'd hear covers of stuff, especially if they
Mm-hmm.
didn't do anything to it. Every now and then I'd hear something where I thought somebody did something different enough that I'd allow it, or I don't know. I was very like rigid about it. But I've always loved singing other people's songs. I love it, and I don't know. I think sort of had to let go a little bit of how it's going to be interpreted, I suppose.
Yeah.
But like in terms of like the actual goals of it, I think, yeah, kind of nice to do something a bit different. But I don't think we set out too much to try and do too much different.
I will say that there is a good precedent for this, in that so many years ago, back when I was young, and I was interning at a radio station in Los Angeles. Stephen Stills came in and did an interview, and he had released a solo album, and on it he had covered a Bob Dylan song, and he talked about the fact that he had all the sheets all lined up, but as he was recording, one of the sheets fell down, and he just kind of took it as kismet and just cut that section out of the song. And he said, yeah, I even called up Bob later and said, do you mind that my version is just going to completely miss this section? And he said, Bob's like, no, I don't care, and so there's a nice precedent of, the person you're covering being someone who, with his own covers, has not been overly precious with every single bit of minutia, and allowing fate, for lack of a better term, to step in.
Yeah, cool. I like that. I really like that. I think, like we were saying before, that you've got to have a bit of space. And I think, like, well, particularly with Helpless, actually, there's something about when Chess sings a song, particularly actually that song as well. We didn't kind of slow it down or anything too much, but there's something about the when Chess sings it. She kind of has this ability to kind of like slow down time a little bit, so you can
Mm.
really take on what she's saying. And she has this great delivery, which is like really kind of crystal, so you can like really, really hear it out. Um, and that's something like quite unique. That's something quite unique, I think, that like really works with the kind of the Neil Young, like with Neil Young particularly, because I think she ended up singing a couple of Neil Young songs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for some reason, I think whether it's just like where their voices sit, but yeah, something about the tone of that she brought in when you were saying that just kind of reminded me that was quite a nice, unique quality that she definitely brought to that, particularly where you could understand the song and hear it differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And since it hasn't been released yet, as you've spoken about this project with other people, how have you described what it's like for people who have yet to hear it?
It's very hard to describe, but I think, like we said, we didn't want to go completely off grid, like off piece, with what's an amazing record, the original record. We love the record, which is why we kind of wanted to do it. We also kind of didn't want to do it. We set ourselves, threw this gauntlet down for ourselves, and a lot of people convinced us to pick it up. So it was a kind of a scary feat, but I think that, for people that are already into, especially like CS&R, Crosby, Stills, Nash Young fans, anybody that's into them guys, and like that, for a start, like that's we've tried to pay homage to a little bit to the record, whilst giving it a little bit of something else, a little bit of ourselves and a little bit of now and a little bit of our friends, giving it a nod, but giving it, just a little slice of where we are in the now.
Mm-hmm. And what was the most surprising aspect of this project? The most surprising element of recording this?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, there was probably a few, I suppose. I think we kind of managed to surprise ourselves a bit with what we can achieve, I suppose, with a bit of help and a lot of help, and a bit of when we put our minds to it and we start doing it, when we really start all kind of like getting in that space and singing together, but also I guess how you can put something together. There's been a lot of surprises along the way, I would say, for sure, but it felt like the right thing to do, and we had a lot of signs. I'm not big into superstition or anything, but we had some pretty crazy signs along the way.
Can you name one?
The biggest one, and this was weird, so we recorded it out in the desert, and myself and Steve, who plays guitar on this record, him and I got into the studio, Taurus Rising, early, because we were already over that way, and so we went in and got set up with Michael and Pearl and the band, and we started playing through some stuff, and like I was doing my best to put down little guide vocals for where the girls would be singing, and so we had a few days to kind of like build some tracks up, because we weren't going to have that much time. The moment we pressed record to do the first take, there was a humongous thunderstorm, like for miles around, in the middle of the desert.
Mm-hmm.
And it was crazy, and you could see it, and you could see the lightning striking it on the mountains and stuff in the distance, and the sky kind of just like going totally black for a while, and then hammering it down, and in the desert, and it was so hot. I was just like, my mind was blown by this. Anyways, so that was like crazy enough, and then it stopped. We were like, all right, bloody hell, because it was like hanging on the roof. So like, right, we start recording now, and then by the time like we'd got, the girls had come out, and we'd gotten all the vocals done, and everyone was done, the moment we pressed, we did the last possible thing we had to record, and everyone was like, was that it? Yeah, that was it. All right, cut. there was another one, that exact
No.
moment, another thunderstorm, like 10 days later. And everyone
Wow.
was like, this doesn't happen that often, but it's pretty weird that moment, both times, like bookending this recording,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
album, there were these massive thunderstorms out in the middle of the desert, and it was crazy. It was like a kind of an omen or something. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's great. I love that. You know, it's almost otherworldly as far as it went. But yeah, I love that you had that experience, and yeah, now I'm going to kind of listen back to it and have that in my mind.
I think we might have got a
Um,
lot of that, of the sound in there somewhere.
oh, okay.
There's all sorts in there, I
And
think.
I mean, out of curiosity, because uh, the desert east of Los Angeles, very different weather-wise from Bristol. Um, are you influenced by the environment of where you record, and how did the desert influence how you played, how you sang?
Well, one thing that is definitely different about not just the desert, but a lot of parts of America, especially when it gets hot, that we don't have so much of over here is AC. So getting used to AC is something that kind of like, especially when you're singing, you kind of have to get used to staying hydrated and making
Yeah.
sure you've got enough to drink. But acclimatizing to that, and then in the desert, I think. But yeah, that probably took a little bit of kind of like, I guess, tuning in on slightly, like especially after the storms, because suddenly there was like this different heat. It was just this like humid heat where it all kind of dried off the sound again. It was really nice.
Mm,
But it also, I think, I don't know, something about it, and the because it was so like foreign to us, that kind of degree of heat. It felt like a holiday in some ways as well. Getting to sing with your mates, make music with your mates, like crack some beers in the studio, get into the whole zone of this record. Yeah,
yeah.
it was great fun. As well. We really sunk into some of that, where they were coming from for sure.